Welcome back to the channel. My name is Steven. I'm a pharmacist. I own 52 units of real estate and I help coach people to buy their first multifamily deal. So today I want to give an update on my new construction BRRRR that I've been trying to do in Huntsville, Alabama. So I talked to the Lennar consultant and she gave me more context. And what was really frustrating for me was that all I wanted to know was how much the cash price discount would be if I offered all cash. So they were showing me a bunch of communities in Huntsville, Alabama, and I had my realtor / property manager on there as well. So basically the property manager would tell Lennar, okay, which communities would we want because we want a good rental market to invest in because I want to get these rented out. That's the whole objective. So we came across like 3 communities, I believe. And then within the 3 communities, we're basically targeting 4-bedroom, 2 to 3 bath, about 2,100 square foot, ideally like single family or single floor. So it's kind of like a ranch style home. And basically I want the square footage to be around like 2,000 to 2,100 is a sweet spot because in Huntsville, Alabama, the rents go for about $1 per square foot. So that was kind of the sweet spot. So, you know, with Lennar, they had an end of the quarter inventory with discounts baked in. So, you know, the discounts varied from, $20K to $40K because they just want to offload this inventory. So most of the price points that I've been seeing is around maybe 320 to 390, or sorry, 290 to 320. And so basically, after pulling so much teeth, they finally gave me an answer. Like if I bought all cash, they gave me a $35,000 discount. So at that point, which is roughly about a 10 to 15% discount off the original purchase price. And I was just like, well, is there any more room for that? And they said no. I was a little bummed because I was hoping to get between a 20 to 25% discount from the asking price so that I could basically do the new construction BRRRR. So I was kind of looking at the numbers for the deal. So pretty much, assuming that this property appraises at the original price before the discounts. So I think it was originally at like 315 or 320 around that range. And then they already had like a discount to about like 295, something like that. And then they gave another 35 discount off of the 295 of 35K if you pay all cash. So it was roughly around 260 was my all-in price. And what I was hoping to do was that if the property appraises at, let's just say 315, which was the original price, I would do it, take 75% of that to do a 75% cash out refinance. That ended up being around maybe 235 to 240. So if I put 260 all cash in, I would leave about maybe $20,000 to $30,000 in the deal and basically own an asset where I, bought up instant equity day one. Because let's just say I bought for whatever 260 and let's say it's worth around 300, I would have basically baked in about $40,000, $50,000 of equity day one. And I get this asset that, I can't pull all my money out. So it's not a perfect BRRRR, but, interest rates are a little bit higher. So, I was underwriting at a 7% interest rate. And, obviously the debt service coverage ratio has to be at least around a 1 to 1.2, depending on the lender you use. I have some lenders that allow DSCR of 1, some require 1.2. This property is looking probably closer to a debt service coverage ratio of around 1, assuming interest rates are around 7%. Obviously if interest rates are a little bit lower than 7, like 6 or 6.5, then maybe, I can get a little bit higher of a debt service coverage ratio on this deal. But, for me, I was just like, okay, I was a little bit bummed. I was hoping to get like a home run deal. And obviously that's too good to be true. But as I kind of thought about it, I'm like, okay, we're basically buying this property all cash. So we're basically getting a, $35,000 discount. It was already discounted on top of that, another like 25K. But, one can argue that, they just artificially inflate the price to drop the price to make it seem like you're getting a discount, right? If you go to any clothing store, they do that all the time. Like, hey, it's an amazing sale, but they jack up the price so that it's not as big of a discount as you think it is. But the part's kind of sticking with me and making me still want to do it is, big picture. Okay, like worst case scenario, I'm leaving, let's say $30,000 in the deal. I basically bought in. So if I put in 260, I'll probably pull out 230 out of that. And from there, I'd have an asset that I would say it just breaks even, to be honest. Like after property management of 10%, maybe I can negotiate down now. If I have more properties, instead of 10%, maybe it's like 8 or 9%, but it's not too significant. I have to pay property tax, insurance, principal, interest, HOA, property management fee. And ideally, you want to be cash flowing a little bit so that you have a reserve for CapEx, maintenance, and all that. So in reality, it's just a break-even deal. So I was talking to my wife, Christine. I'm like, is it worth it to basically buy this deal? Ultimately, leave about $30,000 in the deal. So it's not a perfect BRRRR, but pretty good. Our loan would be around let's call it 230. That's 7% interest. It essentially, I would call it a break even, or maybe make $100 a month in cash flow, but that's not really going to live off of that. And then we're thinking am I just being too hard and I want a home run deal? Or is that, because we said the deal's not amazing, but it's not bad either, right? Like it's not a home run, like, wow, it's a steal, but it's not like a bad deal either. So it's kind of like maybe a double in baseball, right? Hitting a double. So I just thought and then we kind of thought of another scenario where let's just say we left our cash in the deal. Let's say we put our $260K in the deal and we left it there and we didn't actually cash out refinance. So what I did was it rents for $2,100 a month, right? And I think after, property management of 10%, you have your insurance, which is about $100 a month. You have your property tax, which is about $100 a month. And then you have your HOA, which is about $25 a month. And so let's just say for simplicity, it ends up being about, $1,500 a month in net positive cash flow, assuming no mortgage. And if we times that by 12, that's roughly around $18,000. And we took $18,000, divided that by $260,000. I think that's roughly around it's close to 7% return on your money. And I was just thinking, I'm like, that's actually not too terrible, because we just have money sitting in the bank and it's earning around 3.5% to 4%, but we can potentially double that to around 7%. Yes, real estate's more variable, right? But I'm like, it's not bad to leave the money there. It can earn a 7% return on our money, but obviously you lose the liquidity once you put it in real estate. But I know that if I engage debt service coverage ratio lenders, when we want the money back, we can typically execute a cash out refinance. They just need to know the numbers of the rent, and obviously I'll have a lease. I can show them the numbers of property tax, insurance, HOA, and property management, and from there they can calculate their debt service coverage and they can pull out my money in 30 days. Like I said, I'll probably leave $30K in the deal. I won't pull all my money, but we can pull that money out when we want to use it. So I just said wow, is this something that we want to consider? And the sticking point right now is I'm Christine, my wife, has more cash than me, because I bought a lot of real estate and I've been rebuilding my reserves up for the past year and a half, because I'm asset rich, cash poor, but she's the reverse. She's more cash rich and then not as many assets as me. So we were just thinking well, if we were to put $260K down, that'd almost wipe out all of our cash reserves, and to the point where it's a little bit uncomfortable. And then I just said, well, I could use my line of credit, which I have, but the line of credit interest rate is probably gonna be 7 to probably 9%. So I just said, well, we just can put a little bit of the line of credit in there. So that's why we're kind of going back and forth on this deal. Like I said, it's not amazing, but it's not bad either. So the long-term thinking of me is, well, because we were talking about we know buying this property is not going to improve our quality of life at this point. But I just said that, well, money sitting there in the bank, our quality doesn't really change. If we were to put the money in a piece of real estate, and let's just say we left it there because we want a 7% return on our money and not cash out, that doesn't really improve our quality of life too, except that maybe we'll feel a little bit stretched because our reserve is dipped into, right? It's not as big as it currently is. But we also know that we could cash out refinance and literally pull out all of the money besides $30,000. So I was just well, maybe we could whatever money we leave in there, I'll just leave my money in the deal, right? And go through that approach. So like I said, this would be a long-term game. I mean, I underwrote the deal at 2,100 rents, but I think my property manager rented out for 2,200. But obviously I want to be a little bit more, I always underwrite with the lower end numbers to assume the worst case. And then hopefully interest rates is not 7%, maybe it's a little bit lower, but still these are the variables. So high level, is it worth it to just buy this deal, cash out refinance, it's break even, and I end up leaving about $30,000 in the deal. I'm leaning towards a little bit yes, just to try it out, because I just said like, hey, worst case, it's a break even property, and I told her like we have to hold into this deal at least for 10 to 15 years because there's so much building going on in Huntsville, Alabama, that you have to wait until all the building's done before you start to see the true appreciation, right? That's the pros and cons of new construction. Like in my community I'm living in right now, like literally there, I bought in phase 4 and I think they're in phase 10 at this point, but you can buy my same house for like the same price of $900. So obviously if I try to sell my house right now, let's say after a year, it might be challenging, because why would you buy my house for the same price or have to sell it for a loss when you can buy a new one like not too far away from here, and you can pick your flooring, you can pick your backsplash, you can pick your location, whatever. So, and it's not used, and you still have the 1 year builder's warranty. So like, I know that in order to make this house see the most appreciation, I have to hold until the whole community is built and all of it's sold. And at that point, there's scarcity in this area. And once there's scarcity, that's when the home values will start going up. And that's the same thing with Huntsville, Alabama. Like even if I were to sell the house I bought in 2021, I bought for $260. Back then 3.5% interest rates, and even today I could buy a house for about $260. But I'm getting a $35K cash incentive, so call that same deal around like, let's say $290 or $300. But I'm able to buy at $260, and like I said, I have to hold this for like 10-15 years until they're done building all these communities, because Lennar's there, D.R. Horton's there. There's just so much new construction going on. And once that's done and once overbuilding is done, that's when the value will start going up. So this is the problem that Huntsville is facing. I think like Austin, Texas is overbuilding too. So that's the downside of new construction. So I just said that we just had to buy a bunch of these properties. Don't mind leaving $30K in the deal, to be honest. Like that's not going to make or break us. But do we still want to take down this asset? So that's kind of the thing. So would love to hear you guys' input on this. Like, is it worth it to end up leaving $30,000 in the deal? So it's not a perfect BRRRR, but like we're able to pull most of your money, and roughly leaving $30K in the deal is roughly around a 8 to 10% down payment. It's a break-even property, buying with instant equity day one. So I would say, original price was $315. They dropped it down to $290, $295, and after $35K discount, it's $260. So I would safely say that I'm probably baking in $40,000 in equity day one. So it's like almost return. I leave $30K in there, I make $40K on equity. So, it's a double 100% return on your money. But like you said, equity doesn't pay the bills, right? It's more of like a long-term wealth game. And obviously I can pull out my money and then, buy another one, and probably leave another $30,000 in the deal, then pull out another one and leave another $30,000 deals, and eventually we will wipe out our money if we go down this way. But hopes of over time all the building will be done, there'll be principal pay down. Hopefully rents have been going up, but I've seen the reverse in my rental where rents have been going down, and from there hopefully interest rates will lower. Interest has been pretty high, stagnant for a while, but if interest rates drop down to 5 or 4.5, then obviously I can do a refinance and lower it, and then the property will probably cash flow at that point. So yeah, that's kind of the risk and benefit that we're doing for this. So would love like a second opinion on like, am I being too harsh? Like, am I swinging for too much, or should I keep my buy box and thing very high just because I don't need to buy real estate, but I would love to buy amazing deals. So that's the part that I'm stuck at. Like at this point, I just want to buy amazing deals, but maybe this is an amazing deal and I just don't see it, right? Because I've had better. So anyways, hope to hear your thoughts. Let me know any questions. Love to see what you do in this situation. If you want one-on-one coaching, you want courses and mentorship, and you want to send me an email, click on my link tree down below. From there, you could see links to all of those, and send me an email as well if you have any questions or you want a discount code. Otherwise, please like, comment, subscribe. Hope to see you next one. Thank you so much.